It's an all-time low for Sony right now. At least that's what it feels like, because I look around currently and the backlash for what's happened here with Sony moving away from physical disc production starting January 2028 has been overwhelming. I mean, it's actually insane. It seems to be growing each and every day, where people even outside of just the typical gaming sphere are talking about this. Millions and millions of impressions on some of these tweets that are going around. And now we even have different government bodies and representatives talking about this situation. So people are wondering if Sony's going to backtrack on all of this. Well, we're going to go over some of that here today, because this, I think, again, an all-time low for Sony, and we've seen some craziness happen in the PlayStation history, but nothing like this. So we'll go over that and more, guys. Enjoy the video. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you're new. Now, of course, this starts right here with the blog post that they put out. Physical disc production ending in January 2028 for new games releasing on PlayStation consoles. Take a look at the comments, the little hearts. 960 hearts, 7,812 comments at the time of this recording. And it seems like every hour more comments are coming in, and they're not good comments. If you look and scroll down, it's terrible news, we literally own nothing, and a lot of people just frustrated at the idea of physical game discs going away for the PS5 even, but obviously the PlayStation 6. We can all kind of look at that now as just being a digital platform. Will they have a disc drive? That's a great question, because if you don't have any way to put your current library of titles, the PS5 and the PS4, that maybe you've accrued over the last, decade plus at this point, then you may be less likely to follow Sony to the next generation. You may just honestly stay put with your PS5, and Sony, I think, is going to have a difficult time now more than ever getting people to upgrade to what may end up being a $1,000 system. But we'll come back to that actually a little later here, because again, people are wondering if they would backtrack on this. Well, they've already apparently started up plans for repurposing like their main manufacturing and distribution for Blu-ray discs that they use with the PlayStation 5. Now, this is over on Eurogamer right now, and they're saying that the Austrian outlet, so in Austria, if you look at your if you look at the disc on your PlayStation 5, around the edge of the disc on like the cover side of it, and you look to the fine print, it'll say where it was made. I'd say most discs that you take off your shelf and look at are going to say Austria. You may find one that's like the US. That's less likely now, especially if you got the game in the last 4 years or so. It could also say Japan. So I looked at Ninja Gaiden Black 2. I have that on the PS5 physically, and that actually says it was made in Japan. So those are also out there floating around, but I'd say most of them will say Austria on them. And it seems that they are retraining the 300 or so employees for optical micro lenses, and they say this is seems to be linked even to AI. That's what's being brought up. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case here, but some are kind of making that connection, and they're like, what else does AI need from us? In this case, though, Sony, it seems like they've been planning this for a bit now, and I'm sure they were expecting some kind of pushback. We know that because they haven't said anything on their main account since they posted about the physical media going away post-January 2028. And they've done that before with something like Bluepoint. They shut down Bluepoint, and they just go radio silent on social media accounts, hoping that it kind of blows over, and then people forget about it and move on to the next thing, which, I mean, it's a strategy that does work because the internet, especially the news cycle, is fast. Things happen constantly, and yeah, you can actually bury bad news after just a few days of other things happening. This, I think, is a little different, though, and I say that because I've already mentioned the backlash is, just significantly more than what I've ever seen for Sony. This is something else. This is on another level. Just that main tweet that they put out there linking to their blog post has 115 million views on it, and a significant, way more comments than should be there, more than likes, obviously, as people are just expressing their dismay at what's happening. But even beyond that, so in this Eurogamer article, they link back to that official PlayStation used game instructional video, which was a very clever dig that they did, Sony, at Microsoft, because then Microsoft was going through the whole thing where they were trying to eliminate used games. Here we are now with Sony. So what do people do? Well, it got to the point where they went back to this instructional video. And if you look at the comments, there are tons of them from the last couple of days. And I mean, it's like, this is how you own yourself 13 years later, 4,800 upvotes on that, hand games to share, no games to share, 1,200 likes. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. People just came back to this video remembering kind of like the old Sony at this point, and wanted to go back and just kind of dunk on Sony over this. So I'm telling you, this is different. Sony was expecting pushback. I don't think they were expecting it to this degree. And so I mentioned some representatives and regulatory bodies kind of looking at this now, and I think this could be a situation where Sony flies a bit too close to the sun, to where they already have lawsuits that Sony deals with all the time about, is the PlayStation Store a monopoly? It's a closed ecosystem, and Sony is funneling everyone to that store because, I mean, they control the pricing there outright. So now when you start to do things like remove physical games, which is a way that Sony has been able to go, well, look, we have physical games. We don't control everything. There is at least some choice and options out there for customers, but they remove that, and you start to run out of things you can point to kind of explain away what is becoming a funnel to their store where they control the pricing, along with third parties who maybe want to run sales and stuff. But the point is, they do remove consumer buying power outright. Even if you are just a digital-only gamer, like you just buy games off the digital store, just the idea, the existence of physical media does kind of play into the competitive nature of a digital versus physical sale or anything like that. And it just gives you more options to where even if you don't really use the disk drive, say, on your PS5 that you got, there is still that looming idea of, maybe if I come across a used game or a friend has a game and they want to lend it to me or sell it to me cheap, I am able to do that rather than go to the PlayStation Store and spend $60, $70, because take a look at some of those launch PlayStation 5, first-year PlayStation 5 games. You might be surprised at the pricing on them right now on the digital store. So how does the sentiment tie into Sony going to the PlayStation 6? Well, you kind of need it right now at an all-time high versus an all-time low for what I think they're going to present with their next generation device. So this has happened with Sony before, where people are looking at this as overconfident Sony, because they are kind of, if you look at them, they're a market leader. They're ahead of Microsoft easily. Nintendo still competes in the space, but if you look at their just overall like gross revenue, it's very clear that Sony has a large chunk, we'll say, of the overall money that's flowing through the console space, the video game space. So because of that, it's kind of like, we're almost untouchable. And that's what happened going from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3. The reason this is different, though, is because when the PlayStation 3 was being shown, and trust me, I remember this like vividly, it was a really cool system. It had Blu-ray in it, had all these different ports all around. It could play PS1, PS2 games, HDMI, which is a big thing. Wi-Fi was built in. There was a hard drive. They were talking about all kinds of stuff with the system. Then they told us the price was $600, and it was kind of like, that was fun while it lasted. But they presented what you looked at and went, okay, that is an impressive piece of hardware. It's a shame that it's so expensive. And then they said things like, they'll get 2 jobs and stuff. That didn't help matters. And then they spent the rest of the generation trying to make up for it. In this case, though, we haven't even seen the PlayStation 6 system, and they've put themselves behind the 8 ball multiple times at this point, right? So now we're already sitting here thinking that the PlayStation 6 is an all-digital system, and what this move would really be is something that does not at all benefit consumers, like even a little bit, removing physical media, something that has been tied to each and every PlayStation generation with the CD, the DVD, the Blu-ray, the dual layer, the triple layer Blu-ray. Sony has worked to innovate physical media each and every generation as they've gone along through the PlayStation evolution. And that just kind of ends again, beginning of 2028, but obviously for the PlayStation 6. That's something I think that also works against the idea, kind of the feeling of PlayStation, and would probably have people, at least at the beginning, I'll say at $1,000 system, and a lot of these drawbacks that are already being mentioned, probably holding out a bit. It's going to be a tough generation to get people to move from the PS5 to the PS6. Basically, none of this is making it any easier. So could Sony walk this one back? I think it's possible. Like, they could. They would have to, I guess, go back to this manufacturing plant and reorganize and figure things out again. But that would then also mean that their plans for the PS6 would change as well. And then to me, that means it's not coming out until like holiday 2028, which for many people, that might be fine. But for Sony, is it? Because I kind of wonder if they are just going to be confident, so overconfident Sony, and just try to push through this whole thing. I wonder how it's going to go when they start trying to advertise games again on social media, because Marvel ToeCon's coming up. Eventually Wolverine is going to launch, and they'll want to tell people about that. And then eventually the PlayStation 6, which already now has a stigma attached to it. Again, kind of reminded me of what happened with the Xbox One. So I don't know yet, because, again, we haven't seen the PS6, if this is Sony's Xbox One moment, but it's kind of shaping up like that right now. So this is interesting stuff to see how Sony is going to deal with this and what they say, I guess, whenever they decide to come back to social media, and how it's all received. So I guess that's coming up this week. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below in the comments. Is this like the lowest point we've seen for Sony when it comes to sentiment? And I'm talking about when they showed off the PS3 pricing, when they got up on stage and told people with the Vita that the service provider would be AT&T and everyone booed, or when the prices went from $60 to $70 and they just kind of put it out there, when the cross-generation stuff for PS5 and PS4 showed up despite saying that these experiences are like next-generation ones. You kind of get the idea. Just going down the list, this one seems like the worst by like a large margin. But let me know your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.